Wars of Oethia. Book 1, A Traitor's Blade, Battle for Vindheim. Written and read by T.J. M. Maddock. Prologue. A Frozen Grip, Legend of Geisendier. Human, let me tell you of a land far from your reach, a land lost to our ages of time. Some say it hides away in the stars, a planet marked only by 2 moons and a single landmass amidst an endless sea. Others call it a myth, mere legend for children to sleep. However, hidden far away, it awaits, eager to be found and ever eager to be observed. Let me tell you of the whispers, the legend of Geisendier. I was there. I witnessed the rise and fall of Veldrithen, a country separated by the steep and treacherous mountain range, Centropoth. With a mountainous division, the political structure of the land thus formed city-states. From the highest peak of the Centropoth Mountains, known as Mount Centre, a site stretches from the mountainous western half, Monenguj, with Castle Monen at its seat, known for its contoured cut flats and profitable mines, to the eastern prairie land counterpart, Vindheim, Castle Vind at its seat, while it's being known for an adornment of seaports and fishing piers. The Centropoth Range, along with the political turmoil of the Oshnar, drives a wedge between the country, nearing the rise of another civil war. The country lie on the southeastern corner of the supercontinent, granting it an odd seclusion, being separated from the rest of the landmass by 2 great natural formations, the first being molten ore from the volcanic chain Vorkjau, with its fiery pride filling a quake-caused rift in the land just beyond the city of Monen. It well barricades any passage to or from the land of the west. The second being the great sheer cliff face to the north, the Centropoth Cliff. Its ferocity prevents all but us, the most esteemed climbers and craftsmen, the Troth, known as giants in the tongue of humans, or in our tongue, Old Voethian, da Frescerne, home and passage. The inhabitants of Veldrithen are the Oshnar, a people you might recognize, being so closely blood kin. Oshnar, like you human, take residency across most of the planet, minus the toxic swamplands to the west. Oshnar are unfeeling to the power that swirls around them, blind to the sea of energy that feeds them, and deaf to the roar of the soul's flight. Yet, from atop the highest peak of the Centropoth mountain range, Mount Centre, home to the Temple of Vier, a group of Oshnar, so very connected to the fabric of life, dwell as embassy to those willing to see. The Oshnar inhabit all, and all teem with energy, but the great defilers of greed and hate destroys them. Much like their forefathers, they battle, they swindle, and they bring rubble upon themselves. Sons lack even the lessons learned by their fathers before them. A war has been passed, like a hierarchy passes the crown, from the great Shal I to a loathsome scrabble between the children of a vanishing dynasty. My father watched the rise of the Voethian dynasty, but he also watched it crumble, torn apart by those sons of love. Like coals under a melting pot, a mountain's lid will be removed, steam will flow hot, and coals will run red, to bring dry, reddened bones of old. There in his castle he awaits. There in his home he is immature to the threats, immature to his destiny. At the light's dawn, when the sword is finally drawn, he may awaken. He may. Looking out to the east from his castle window, the young boy could see the distant mountain range of Centropoth. What is that glow? He thought to himself, staring at the highest peak in the distance. It was surrounded by a glowing blue hue of light, which swirled around it, a mere whirlwind around a cone. Is it the cult? His mind wondered. Fa told me stories about the men on the mountain, locked away in their temple. He paused, and suddenly he spoke aloud, not noticing the transition. But I thought it was that mountain. His fingers selected a peak, located by the sheer cliffs, almost as if showing somebody. Yet he was alone in his room. "Valek, dinner's ready!" A woman's voice echoed through the stone walls, making way to Valek's ear. "Coming," he replied, setting away from the window, forgetting the humming light of the mountain top. Better hurry, he thought. I don't want to make Miss Priscilla angry. She would certainly plant the spoon if I were late again. As he reached the door out his room, he paused, as if something was entrancing him to stay, to turn around and look out the window. It was a call, a feeling from deep within himself. It felt like he himself was far away. Yet, he bobbed his head, shaking the feeling, and set off down toward the kitchen. At his absence, the light grew larger and brighter. A deep hum began emanating from the mountain's peak. However, being at such a distance, its presence was nearly inaudible. Through the haze of light and swirling of freezing snow and ice, an ancient monastery stood at the peak's point. Rhythmic chanting made its way through ancient weather-worn walls as the beat of heavy-hide drums rattled the stones and shook all in their presence. A horn blast would periodically cut the beat and silence the temple, allowing the light's hum emitted to overpower all other sound. A courtyard filled a flattened space in front of the building, creating a prelude to massive worn iron double doors that guard its entry. Inside, a great hall develops, filled with cultists, their long brown hooded robes hiding any human features. An assortment of them were aligned in kneeling rows, facing the far back of the room. All but one was chanting to the beat, the heart-mocking pounding created by a line of drummers against the back wall of the room. A loud horn's cry cut to silence as the two blowers emptied their lungs from their posts at opposite back corners of the hall. The drummers lay down their sticks and turned to the center of the back wall of the room, almost creating two arrows with their bodies. All focused their eyes on a lone cultist in the middle of the back wall. The lone cultist stood behind a stone-carved pedestal, studying an old, frayed tome. A male voice filled the silence of the room, its origin sounding as if wrought from a bear. "Through winter's maw," the lone one's voice rang out, echoing around the auditorium-like hall as he looked up from the tome. His face weather-worn and wrinkled, his large white beard hung out from his hood, which bobbed as he spoke. To which a symphony of voices copied his words, creating a rhythm for he to follow. "To summer's scorn!" The cooling voice again filled the hall, repeating the pattern. They continued their chant. "When mortal blood entangles with the air, come forth a child to light, a bringer of summer's warmth to land of crimson tides, wrought forth by stone, the death abound's living grasp." The rasp of voices faded to the sound of drummers retrieving their sticks, and cracked them against the wooden frames of their instruments. The lead cultist raised his arms to the roof. With his palms up, the drummers spun their sticks in hand and readied. "Guys in the air, descend!" The leader let down his arms after the verse. "Thra-da-dum!" The echo of the drums seemed to shake the very walls. As the booming faded, replaced by the ruffling of cloaks, all the kneeling priests touched their head to the ground and then rose in cry, "To you we bow!" The leader clutched his hands together in front of his chest and spoke. "From the sea of darkness, you come." "Guys in the air," the mass replied. The leader's arms shot out. The hornmen again took up their route, symbolizing for the mass to rise. As the mournful cry filled the silence, they all rose and formed double lines facing the doors. The leader stepped past his podium, leaving behind the text, "Open." He then trod up the center of the two columns of cultists. All was silent from them as the horns faded their cries, and the blowers joined the lines. Only the hum of the hue then filled the otherwise empty oral space. He reached the door, and heaved on the heavy iron beasts. They groaned with resentment, unused to being opened. He stepped out into the wind, the bright hue cutting off all lateral view. He raised an arm and beckoned the rest to follow him out. They all filed out of the sanctuary, their puffs of icy breath filling the clearing. When all were out, they formed a crescent moon shape, facing the door and leader, kneeling again. As knees met ice-laden stone, their heads rose, transfixing their eyes back to the leader. He began a wordless hymn, beckoning the arms of the watchers to rise to the heavens. "Haroon," he called, at which the entire crowd took up the hymn, blending the voices of old and young into a choir. The wind rushed forth at the conjunction. The hue formed a bubble above the temple, enveloping the mountain top, its grasp on reality growing tighter and its speed growing faster. The men's robes flailed about them as the hue grew above them. The leader again called out like before, heightening the power of sound emitted from the assembly. The light grew brighter to a flash. A brilliant display of white, blue, and silver converged on the center of the crescent moon of men. Then, like a sun-going supernova, exploded, shooting beams of energy across the entire world, calling forth a speck from the stars. The wind subsided, and with it, the hue. Its light no longer blocking the outside world. The setting sun endowed its beams of crimson light over the mountain top, cascading down onto an array of ice sculptures. The cultists no longer men, but frozen statuettes. Their leader stood yet still above all them all, his arms and head raised to the heavens, with his icy body filled by rays of crimson light, casting streaks across the ground, a rainbow streak bouncing from statue to statue. A gust of wind suddenly blasted the mountain top, the final act that closed the doors to the monastery, leaving the cultists to await their plea, a new destiny to come and melt their fate. As the larger of the two moons peaked, a blue rim met the sea in the distance, and a lone wolf's cry rang out from the forest far below, greeting it. Like the voice of a mother seeking a long-lost child, the chilling yowl raised itself into the sky, dragging the slowly rising moons into the night of silver. When at last the sun had hidden behind the mountains, the moons had residence in the sky, their orbits and color causing the night to periodically be filled with a kaleidoscope of colors. With each of the moon's guidance and watchfulness over the land, fate seemed to search, summoning anew. Prophecy from icy grasps, old tome summoned withered rasps.